Before I go into the subject of this video, I would like to tell that this is my first video in English. I'm from Denmark and previous I've been doing videos in Danish. So please bear with me. I might, search a bit for some words or maybe use a wrong word here or there. And some of you might think I'm talking with a strange accent. I guess I know how you feel. Sometimes when I see videos with people talking a kind of English that even sounds to me quite strange. I have experienced that. So I understand if someone thinks, what is this way he talks? But, well, that's Danish with, sorry, no, that's not Danish. It's English with Danish accent and maybe a bit searching and stumbling and, what do you call that? And, but I'll do the best I can. So let's move into the subject. I will say just one thing more. The reason why I'm making this video is that it's a kind of special gift or regard or whatever you might call it to a lot of people out there making videos about music, videos I watch, and I think they are doing a really great job, most of them. And I commented a lot on many of those videos, writing a lot and probably writing more than any of them gonna read. But there's a little something I think that is a bit overlooked. And that is the connection between an album and the period it was made in. Of course, a lot of people had talked about that in different ways and from different angles and approaches, but the thing I am thinking about is when you as a listener trying to get into something that is new territory for you, of course you can say, okay, I want to get to know this album and play it over and over and over and over again. And of course, if you play it over and over again, you get to know it. And you get to know it very well. But there may be some problems about getting to really understand it. It's like there's something that won't fall into place, or what you might call it. And I think that's a question of what periods you are into. And when I say that, a period can be now or way back. But we are in a period now. And there are things going around. There are things going on around us. And it's a part of the thing. And you may not be the kind that reads a newspaper every day, but still there are things are going on. Well, the obvious example, Corona or COVID-19, do you call it that in English? We are all affected about that. And I honestly think that music books in the future, when they are writing about this period, it will be mentioned, just like books about the music of the 60s at some point are almost guaranteed to mention the war in Vietnam. And I think that goes for Corona too in our period. But even though we're living in this period, well, not everybody are into what's going on in music. Uh, Not everybody are following. Oh, there's something new from that band, and there's something new from that singer, and so on. Not everybody does that. There are people uh, that haven't got a clue what has happened the last many years. So if they wanted to find out what's going on now, they may run into a problem, because if they had been kind of out of that for a longer period, they are used to music from an older period, and there may be, you know, a hole from where they are in the kind of music they listen to and to what's going on now. There is a hole, and it's not, well, and it's difficult to just take that jump and say, okay, I listened, I listened to a lot of new stuff now and find out what is going on. They would probably have some great issues with that. Um I can tell the way I came to think about this was a video a guy made where he talked about Paul McCartney albums and was a bit harsh on Flowers in the Dirt, and was talking about uh, an 80s sound that annoys him. Well, I know what he means, and I've heard several people talking about similar thing. It seems that about 76 or 77, about there, and then from, well, the last years of the 80s and maybe a little bit into the 90s, there was a common way of producing music that many people today have an issue with, and I actually feel the same way myself. And it's kind of funny because back then I didn't thought of it that way, and there were things I actually liked back then, and I think it's horrible. Listen to them today. It's, oh, you know, and but back then, well, let me admit, I am one of those people who are not following very much what is going on and don't care much, to be honest. But back then I was more into things and was more, you know, following what was going on. So I was kind of part of the movement, you could say, and I was into that time, and so it felt more natural back then. But now, when I'm looking back, I think, what? did I listen to that? Did I like that? uh, and and if I want to kind of rediscover the enjoyment I had, I must find a way to get into it. It could be taking some things that are a bit earlier, and then, okay, we follow up. I take a given amount of albums from each year and going up, and then, okay, I can kind of get into it again. And I think in many cases that's necessary if you want to get into a period you are not familiar with. As I said, you can take an album and listen to it over and over and over again. And we'll probably find a way into it. But it may feel still a bit unfamiliar and strange, and and you have to get into the period, the time of that album. For me personally, in most cases, when I want to explore something unfamiliar to me, I have to move forward to it from an older point. But for some people, it could be the other way around, that they have to move back to it from a later point. It all depends on what periods they are into, because if you are into a period, well, that kind of solves the problem, and you can explore things from the same period that you are that are you don't know, but it's still that period, so you kind of got the context in place. But if it's done later or if it's done before, it might be necessary to do a bit more work, because you have to move in to another era, well, that way or that way. Um, and it's about many things. I mentioned the way music are produced. I guess young people who mostly listen to new music, what comes out now, if they heard, let's say, an old blues recording back from the 20s, well, not the 20s we are in now, but 100 years ago, well, almost. That period is quite important in the story of the blues. It was a period with some very great female singers. Bessie Smith is the best known of them, but there was many others. And I think if young people heard that, they will say, "What? It sounds like it's coming to a, what do you call it? you know that thing, or is it recorded in a phone box in stormy weather? Or oh, sorry, young people don't know what a phone box is. There you got it. So there's about how it is recorded. And I think for many young people, those old recordings, it would be impossible to judge the the music because they would be so annoyed about the sound quality of those recordings. And it might surprise a lot of people to hear that I feel in a similar way about most of the music that is coming out now. Uh, and that's because for this last, what is it, 10, 15 years, maybe even more, I haven't been that much into things and concerned about what is going on. So it's a different sound. It's a the different way of making music, and it's kind of and and some of the ways some instruments sounds, even well known in instrument. I'm not talking about some weird synth sound or something. It could be a piano or guitar, but the way it is recorded and produced, well, you can hear it's a piano, you can hear it's a guitar, but it doesn't sound like a piano or a guitar would have sounded 30 or 40 years ago. Uh, so there's all this about sound production, recording, and so on. But there are also what I was talking a bit about before, about the time, what was going on, how was those times, what was the big questions of that time, and all that kind of stuff. And if you are interested in a period, a bit more historical period, uh, it may not be that you know a lot about it, but you know something, because this is the thing that interests you. If you are a Beatles fan, for instance, I'm sure you know that Beatles' first US tour was shortly after the Kennedy murder. That kind of things. Well, I just mentioned uh, phone boxes. That was a part of my childhood. Here in Denmark, at some point there was a period where there was someone called the Bomb Man. He was placing bombs in phone boxes. So when I was a child in the 70s, there actually was a period where you were afraid to step into a phone box. And please remember, there were no cell phones back then, no mobiles, nothing of that kind. So if you were stranded somewhere and you had to call home and tell your parents, "Oh, I'm late. I'm coming half an hour later," or say, "Well, I'm totally lost here. Can you come and get me?" or something. You have to go into a phone box and you put money in and you called home. That was the way we did it back then. And if you were out there somewhere, nobody could reach you. Nobody could just call you up or send you a text message or anything. So if they didn't know where you were, they really didn't and couldn't find you. And that sort of things, it's a part of it. And yes, so as you can imagine, those of you who haven't experienced those times, sometimes it was really important to make a call. So imagine this: there was this period we kids we were so afraid of stepping into a phone box because there was a possibility that the moment the door closed, it would say poof. So yes, you see the problem, and all that kind of things. And I guess you all of you interested in music, and especially if you are a record collector, you know that the covers, there are fashions and trends in cover design. Well, I got this book here uh, called called Jazz Covers, and it's web and it's, well, it's about jazz, so they are not that anything about rock and pop music and or other genres, but there are a lot of interesting examples of the changing fashions and trends in cover designs through the years. And it changes. And of course, if you take a look at 10 uh, recently released albums, well, they got different covers. Of course they do. But still, it's kind of inside something that, okay, your guess will be, well, that is not that old. That might have come just a short while ago. And if you get an old album in your hand, well, you can see, oh, it's a different kind of cover design. And well, then there are, from the early periods of recorded music, well, up to the 40s, as far as I remember, it was about 47, 48 or thereabout that the first albums came about. Before that, it was the old 78s, well, called so because they were driving at 78 speed very fast, and they were made of shellac, a vinyl record. Well, of course you have to take care of it and all that, but it doesn't break if you drop it on the floor. A shellac record might do that. So that was the way music was made back then. But then, later on, of course, there have been made a lot of compilations of the greatest music from that era. So you can find, well, I mentioned Bessie Smith earlier, or it might be the early recordings of the Duke Ellington Orchestra or whatever. But in most cases, when they make such a compilation, they use a picture back from that period. And you see Bessie Smith standing there, or the Ellington Orchestra sitting there, or whoever it might be. So they kind of give a hint of the period, and from just looking at the cover, you get an idea. Okay, we are way back now, really way back. not just 3 months or 2 years way back. We are way back. It was before Elvis, it was before Beatles, it was before whatever you want to mention. Uh, uh, so, and as I said before, they are recorded in a way that for most modern listeners could have some issues. And of course, this is a bit difficult to explain. Uh, well, let me mention two covers I recall seeing recently with new music made in the last year or so. There's Adele's 30 and there's Olivia Rodrigo's Sour. And they are kind of different. Adele is seen in profile from the side, and the cover is almost entirely in white, while Olivia Rodrigo's cover, she's in front, she's painted in the face, and it's very colorful. So you say they are very different, yes, but still they got this sense of today, of the era we are in. But look here, this is also just a picture of a face, just like Rodrigo and Adele. But, well, I guess you can see the difference, and you are in no doubt, well, we are back here. We are back to the 50s here. And I'm sure you all can see that. And, well, it's a picture of a face too, but it's made in a different way. Even though there are those differences I just mentioned between Adele and Rodrigo, still you can see this is from another time. We are back in the 50s, and let me show you another cover here. Yes, here it was. I mean, well, this is not a picture of a face. This is Gene Vincent in the front, standing with his guitar and his backing group, the Blue Caps, you see in the background. But still, there is this thing about it that makes you say, oh, it's probably from the same period as that Elvis album. And the differences, like those differences I mentioned between Adele and Rodrigo, something comparative to that might be if you see this Gene Vincent record, and then take a look at this Buddy Holly, the chirping crickets. You see, okay, it's both things are bands standing with their guitars, and but made in two quite different ways, and may signals also some different things, and giving you a bit different impression of what to expect when putting that on the player. But still, they sort of signals the same period. I don't know if you can follow and understand what I mean, and well, let me repeat what I said earlier. This is the first time ever I make a video in English, and I'm not that uh, used to sit and talk in English. Uh, so sitting here talking in English, it's a new thing to me, and perhaps I do not explain things very well. But the point is, there is all those kind of things about different periods. And so if you are listening to something from a period you are sort of into, well, you are on steady ground, you know, and it might be different from other things you know from that period. At the same time, those albums with Elvis and Buddy Holly and Gene Vincent were made. Uh, jazz musicians such as Sonny Rollins were doing a quite different thing, and it's not like you can say, oh, Buddy Holly and Sonny Rollins, that same kind of music. No, it's not. But it's the same period, and that gives you a solid point to work from if you want to. If you, let's say you are a big Buddy Holly fan and you want to get into Sonny Rollins way, you must prepare yourself to something completely different from what you are used to. But you got a solid point, a steady ground, whatever you might call it, because it's the same period. And that will help you even if you are getting into something that different. But uh, let's, if you want to get into something from another period, a period you have not been that much into and probably haven't heard very much music from at all, and you don't know much about what happened at that specific time, it will be more difficult. And that's my point. That, and as I said in the beginning, well, you want to know that album and get into that, yeah, well, you can play it over and over again. But you may still have some issues or problems or whatever you might call it, something that feels like, I'm not really there. I'm not really there. There's something that won't fall into place and fit. Well, and that's my point, that it might be a question of period, and that you have to get more into the period and say, okay, when was this made? What happened back then? And what kind of other kinds of music were around at that time, and all that kind of stuff. And it will help you. And you might say, well, that's just even more work. Instead of just listen to one album, so suddenly you come and tell me I have to listen to 50 albums. Hey, I just wanted to know what that was. Yes, you did. But you, well, if you just want to hear what is it, what are they doing, well, that's quite easy to overcome. But if you want to understand anything about it and get a feeling, well, yes, I got it, you are into a bit of more work, and you have to get into the period and look at what was happening, other kinds of music that was around at the time, and all that kind of things. And of course, some of you might disagree with me and say, well, that's rubbish and you don't have to do such a thing. But only thing I can say, it's in my personal experience, it's what really does something. That's when you're really trying to just look at that particular album you want to get acquainted with, but also look at its historical surroundings. That does something, and that opens some doors of understanding for you that you wouldn't have without. Uh, well, at least it does for me. Maybe it doesn't for you. I don't know. So that was the thing I wanted to talk about, and I have probably talked much longer about it than I should, but that's the way it goes. So that was it. So if anyone was actually watching this, I say thank you for watching. So that's it. End of my first English video.